Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Now we are back working on my N47 powered BMW 318D. Now what are we doing today? We are going to be swapping out the oil filter housing and oil cooler gaskets because I have a pretty nasty leak just down there and I am 99% sure that is the cause of our issue. Now how much oil are we losing? A lot. I started this thing up when it was cold and I could physically see oil just pouring from the oil filter housing area. So right here we have two sets of gaskets. So this is the block gasket, it's the flat metal gasket that sits on the back side of the entire oil filter housing. Then we have here a couple of rubber gaskets. This sits, I believe, between the oil filter housing and the oil cooler. We will see once we get in here, but this should be everything that I need today. Now do bear in mind this is a manual model. If yours is an automatic, there should be another set of O-rings that you need to install as well. I believe that's probably for the transmission cooler, but the entire process is pretty much the exact same. Do note as well that this is a later N47 engine. This is post 2010 if you have a pre-2010. Again, the steps are pretty much the exact same, but there may be the odd hose or bracket that is slightly different. Oh, also the intake manifold, that'll be different as well if you have a pre-2010 model. Now then, before we get into things, do me a massive favor, do hit the like button on this video. It really does help me out and it shows your appreciation. Now what we'll do is we'll lift up the engine cover itself and get that out of the way, and we should be able to see the oil filter just underneath that cap there. And this area is pretty well covered by the intake manifold. If I don't have to remove the intake manifold, then I won't be doing it. I'd imagine it's a hell of a lot easier to get the intake manifold out of the way. If, of course, you know, it's too difficult to do it with it in place, I will remove it, but I've got a bunch of work planned on that at a later date, so I want to try and keep that in place if possible. But yeah, let's see how we get on anyway. First thing we need to do is drain the oil and remove the old oil filter, because we're going to be doing an oil change at the same time as well. Okay, so slight change in plan, not going to be draining the oil or changing the oil filter. Just removed the oil filter. I was thinking that looks very small compared to the one that I have. Basically this one is for the earlier N47. I guess they decided to go to a smaller oil filter, so I'll have to wait until I can get a new oil filter, and then I'll do a oil and filter change after we're done this job. But yeah, I'm going to keep the same oil in, keep the same oil filter in for now, but yeah, we can just crack on and start removing the oil filter housing. So then, for starters, I think what I'm going to do is just disconnect the positive cable off of the alternator here. Have already disconnected the battery in the boot as well. As you can see, negative terminal disconnected, just a 10mm nut holding that on. This should be a 13mm, which it is. Got them out of the way. Put the nut back on, and we can get the Torx screw that holds the dipstick tube in place off. That's that Torx screw removed. Dipstick tube can now move out of the way. Now I think I'm going to disconnect these two hoses, that one there and that one there. Just pop the clip up and then it should come away. Should have some coolant come out here. Yep, a little bit of coolant ran out. And there's that one off. Now, so far I can see 5 bolts, look like just 10mm bolts. You're not going to be able to see, it's quite tight in here. There's one there, one underneath this pipe up there, one at the bottom, one on the other side of this cooler, one around here, then I'm going to guess there'll be a 6th one probably up there. I'm going to remove the others and and then I'm going to have to hope and pray I can get onto the one that's up there potentially. So managed to crack those 5 bolts loose, and you can actually get onto the 6th one. That extension's on it right there. It's yeah, you can't see it, but if you get your hand behind there, you definitely can feel it. And you know, once you get it on there, crack it loose, and we should be good to go then. That should be all 6 bolts loose. They're not tight at all. I'm guessing they should be done to like 10 Newton meters, because yeah, 1/4 inch ratchet under them, no problem whatsoever. And hope we don't drop them. That's what the bolt looks like, for those wondering. There we are, that's all 6 bolts removed. Look at that, completely covered in oil. Still seems pretty solid. Is it just stuck on there with the gasket? This is where we find out someone's siliconed it on. That should be all the bolts removed. Nothing to really tap on. Try and give it a lever. It's moving, but I am levering onto plastic, so I kind of don't want to do that. There we go, it's definitely loose, but can I get it out? I think so. It's very tight in here. Got it. There we go, oil filter housing removed. You can definitely see why it's failed, can't you? This gasket's just completely just came away from the steel part of it. This is what the block is looking like for those that care. Very dirty. I'll give that a good clean up before we reinstall the oil filter housing. So with it now removed, I guess that's all the proof you need that you do not have to remove the intake manifold, you don't have to remove the alternator, you don't even have to remove this coolant pipe here. I could, to be honest, quite comfortably get on all 6 of the bolts, didn't need any swivel sockets or anything. As long as we had these positive cables out the way, as long as we had the hoses disconnected, yeah, quite straightforward to get that off. Right, we'll give all this a good clean up with some brake cleaner, and then we'll get the filter housing ready for reinstallation. Right, so I have separated the oil cooler from the oil filter housing, just held in by these 2 Torx 30 screws. Just remove them and the whole thing should then separate. I have to do that because we want to swap out the rubber gaskets here as well. There's one there and there's also one there as well. They look, I mean, it's hard to tell if they've been leaking, but they look pretty flat, so yeah, definitely worthwhile changing these as well as the flat metal gasket. So after spending a good amount of time cleaning things up, here's how we're currently looking. The block is looking nice and clean. The mating surface gave the oil cooler a good clean up, ready to receive the new gasket. Also gave the oil filter housing a good clean up as well. Main thing is make sure there's no debris where the gaskets sit. Also remove these, I think they are oil control valves, basically helps control the pressure of the oil. Make sure you do put them in, make sure they go back in the correct holes. One is bigger than the other. Yeah, you can't really get it wrong, but they do have to go in, otherwise you're going to have serious oil pressure issues. So get them put back in, and then we can get the new gaskets all installed. Okay, if you're wondering which brand I use when it comes to any sort of engine gaskets, pretty much always use L-ring. Fairly confident this is what is used from the factory, but of course you can get genuine BMW, but you're probably going to pay twice the price. If you are wanting to do this job yourself as well, I'll leave links down in the description, you know, where I've got these gaskets from at a good price. These two rubber gaskets should only go in one way. There we go, that's one, and this one as well. Okay, so that is the oil filter housing gaskets replaced. Now we can get the oil cooler reinstalled onto this. So it just slides in place. There's a couple of dowels it has to sit on as well. And we can just get the two Torx 30 screws reinstalled. One goes here, and the other goes here. Don't have to go crazy with these screws, because at the end of the day they are screws, they're not bolts. These were not tight at all. That will do us, and now we can get the flat metal gasket installed. And again, this should only go on one way. It's got two dowels on the gasket itself, and it should sit like this. And with this gasket now in place, this is now ready to be installed back onto the engine. So as you can see, oil filter housing all now back in place, all 6 bolts installed. Now I'm just going to torque them all down to 10 Newton meters. They're only M6 bolts. Did look up online, and if they are M8 bolts they should be around 20 Newton meters, but just for these M6 bolts 10 Newton meters. So that's what I'm going to do. There we go, it's all 6 bolts now tightened down. What we can do is get the oil filter reinstalled with the cap back on. We can get the dipstick tube fastened back onto the oil filter housing, and then we can get the positive cable back onto the alternator, and then get these hoses reconnected up as well. Well, there we go then. Positive cables back on the alternator, dipstick tube now secured, both those hoses back on. Just topped up some water in the coolant reservoir. I will be doing a complete coolant flush at the moment, so I'm not bothered about, you know, adding coolant. Yeah, I'll do that in a couple of weeks or so to get all of the old coolant out, because it has the wrong kind in. But yeah, just check the oil level, that's fine. So I think what we'll do is fire the engine up. Oh, need to plug the battery back in, and then we'll fire the engine up and check to see if we have any leaks. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. Before, oil was literally just pouring out down there. Nothing now though. Success. Well then, there we go, another job done on the cheap Cat S wrote-off BMW from Birmingham, aka Project KFC. Yeah, hopefully this thing doesn't continue to leak oil now. It shouldn't do, I have checked it, it seems absolutely fine. Oil has stayed at the max mark, so we should be golden, hopefully. But yeah, hopefully this video has been helpful anyway. I know it's quite a common issue on the N47 engine, so hopefully you've all enjoyed this one. Remember to give it a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and we'll see you all in that next one.